Okay, so welcome back to the Talent Whisperer. It's your host, Chipochedu, and today I have a great guest. My guest name is Ntola Obazee. Did I get that right?
Yes, he did. But for my
You,
dad's
you know, I asked you,
reference, he would want to
yeah,
say Nyangotola or Vazi, Nyangotola Sanga, but Ntola is
Nyangotola.
perfect. Intola. Let's go with
Nyangotola.
Intola.
I love it. I love it. Okay, Obazee, and I sent you a voice note saying, did I get this right? So, Ntola has over 20 years experience in commercial sales across all channels. She's been in retail, B2B, e-commerce, marketplaces, and has held pretty senior leadership positions in the UK and across Europe. She's had a focus in strategic business development and market entry methods across SMEs, omnichannels. You need to tell me what an omnichannel is because I was like, okay. Omnichannels and vertical retailers. And Tola is currently a trading director, which is like a commercial director for a British brand, and is responsible for the UK and global e commerce and online marketplace business. She also manages different relationships with business partners globally. Ntola is also a keynote speaker. She's a regular panelist where she's an expert on these different panels and constantly shares her area of expertise. And she also has her own podcast, the Trailblazers Podcast. We'll definitely share a link to your podcast when we post this, Ntola. And I personally admire Ntola very much. I've known her years. And yeah, so really excited to have you as a guest, Ntola, and welcome to the Talent Whisperer podcast.
I am so happy to be here. I mean, cheers to the podcast gang, and thanks for that
Yes.
lovely introduction as well.
Yeah, I mean, every time I do these intros, I just love to think how these are. I'm like, fact, fact, fact,
Yes,
you
fact
know?
checking
And
basically. Yeah.
yes, yes, facts on facts. And it just makes me really happy to see um, women like you that are trailblazers and that, gives women like you give me people to look up to. So I absolutely love that. And when I read these things out and they're facts, I'm like, yes, let's get it.
And a Zambian woman
So
for that fact. So that's even a bonus as well,
we should have not left that out of the intro. Like a Zambian woman
for sure.
killing it in the UK
Yeah.
and in Europe. Love it. So on the podcast, we always like to go back because I think it's always important to understand someone's background, what they were like as a kid, to kind of get to connect the dots as we go throughout our discussions. So, Ntola, what were you like as a kid? What did you get constantly? What did you get constantly praised for? What did you get in trouble for? And yeah, what was Ntola like as a kid?
It was so nice prepping for this podcast because I had to ask my siblings to say, girls, can you tell me what this is about? But if I look back early years, I was always very creative, very much into sports, very much into arts, culture, and this was always the basis from my parents, the foundation. They were always curious, we always had African art at home. We always had back in the day fashion magazines. My father used to collect vinyl, so we had lots of records with music, all kinds of music from all genres. And
Wow.
because at the beginning I was an only child for a few years, I used to be able to preoccupy myself. So I was one of those kids you could just leave in the room with books, with a piano, and I could just preoccupy myself, which for parents they always love that. I think what I would get in trouble for was I never took no for an answer. And you could say that is a strength and a weakness as
Yeah.
well, but I never took no for an answer. I always wanted things my way. I always questioned why I couldn't have certain things. I questioned why can't I do what boys want to do? When you're growing up in a Zambian household,
Yeah.
there's certain things that are
Yeah.
preserved mostly for girls, rightly so. And I would always question. I think those are things I'd be getting in trouble. But I think now talk about coming to today, that's a strength of mine, not giving up, not taking no for an answer.
Yeah. And it's funny, like I've seen a trend now that the things that we got in trouble for as kids come to serve us really well when we're adults. Because I guess you kind of build a resilience in that kind of being a rebel. And if you stick to it and if you keep getting in trouble for it, it means that you're just like holding on, like I'll die on this hill. And then somehow that builds. And then when you're an adult, that comes to like serve you really well, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I think my mother was always worried because she always thought, damn, she always used to say, we want an Ntota. She would say that. Like either this is going to serve you well in the future or you're just going to
yeah,
be a troublemaker. So you're so right. Builds resilience, builds strength,
yeah,
builds grit. You're tough on
yeah.
the inside, which is important as you navigate your life.
But what is that they say about like well behaved women seldom make history?
Well, true. Yes. Yeah, you need to be someone who's pushing boundaries, who questions the status quo, someone who, is always looking for another way to do things. There's a young lady I met yesterday at an event. She's written a book called Slay in Your Lane. So not stay in your lane, you know,
Slay in your
slay in your
lane.
lane. And
Gosh, I
she's
love
also
that.
started a tech company as well because she's always thought and always questioned, why are we conforming to conventions? Why can't we find another way of doing this? Because she's curious. So you're right. If you don't challenge the status quo, you won't make
Yeah,
history.
yeah. Oh, for sure. So let's jump to 12th grade. Were you, first of all, were you here in Lusaka for 12th grade? What were you hopeful for? And what at that point, what were you thinking about? Because I know there's a lot of pressure on us as we are writing those exams to kind of have the next step figured out. So what were you hoping to do? What were you excited about doing after school? And then what ended up happening? Because
Yeah.
once again, what we hope for and what ends up happening is not normally the same thing.
Yeah, how long have we got? So just in terms of my background,
We have
so
time.
I was I was born in Germany because my parents studied there. They got a scholarship there to study, so that's how I ended up being born in Germany. Then fast forward, they moved to the Copper Belt first, and then moved to Lusaka. So most of my my childhood years, I was raised in Lusaka. I went into the National School of Lusaka. And I was always told by my parents, in order for you to be successful in life, you need to work hard in school. If you work hard, you can get into the right universities, scholarships, etc. So I'm basically following that principle. Like, right, there's certain things I want in my life. I had a vision of how I wanted my life to be. And I said, right, I'll follow this path. I'll follow everything, our parents have said, and that's what I'm going to do. And it was a challenging time writing grade 12. We were in financial difficulties at the time. So even as I was writing the exams, school fees hadn't been paid. It was really a trying time. But the original goal was to be a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor. So
Okay.
I chose a career path where I thought, okay, how can I make the largest amount of money and that will allow me to work globally? That was the thought process. So I thought, I'll study medicine, I'll become a surgeon. That was the path.
Yeah.
So I graduated, had really good results in school, but there was no funding. There was no money to go to university. We were going through really bad financial difficulties. We were homeless, etc., etc.
Oh wow.
And there was a pivot where my mother said, well, you were born in Germany, go to Germany and carve out a life for yourself there. Literally, that was it.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so got on a plane, not knowing what was going to
That must have
happen.
been scary.
That was very scary, but my mom was a very wise woman. And I think all the foundations and principles that they had given me growing up, being confident, being open to opportunity, having my spiritual values as well, thinking about, it's important to connect with people, it's important to be kind, integrity, are all the tools that they gave me to be able to succeed in a different country and also as a woman of color as
Amazing.
well.
Yeah.
So got on a plane, got there, and really started from the ground up in terms of building my life and my career. The original intent was to study medicine, become a cardiac surgeon, make loads of money, and work
Yeah.
globally. That was the plan.
So it's interesting you bring up in our last episode. We talked about values. You brought up values right now. And in our last episode, we kind of talked about like having values or similar values or people that gel because their values, they have similar values, right? And you really just like highlighted the values you were raised with. Are these things you named later in life? Were you able to name these values and like, oh, that's what mom and dad were trying to teach me? Or were they clear in their communication at the time of raising you to say, these are our values, you know? I'm just trying to like carve out like, when people realize the values that they were raised with, is that something we formulate for ourselves or have some of us been lucky enough to actually have those articulated when we're growing up?
I think it's twofold. So when growing up, they would articulate the values, but I would also
Wow.
observe them, how they interacted with other people, how they treated, the man on the street, the man in the office, of all
Yep.
walks of life, how they interacted with their peers, with their business colleagues. I would overhear how my dad spoke in business meetings and conversations. So would see it. And then obviously religion, that we would pray together, we would pray in a circle as a family, because the principle is, where
Amazing.
one or two people are gathered, the Lord is present. So if you are into religion,
Yes.
so just seeing that and then going through my own life, you sort of have those aha moments saying, wow, connection. Why is connection important? When you meet people, have you ever heard something as invisible reputation? So your reputation is, you have your professional career
Yeah.
and how you prove yourself by the things that you achieve, the things that you do, but also there's that invisible reputation. So if you're a man or a woman, do you help people when you see them struggling with their work? Do you open the door for someone when they have things in their hand? These are things people see, so that at some point, I mean, you're in HR and human resources.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you're recruiting people, have you noticed sometimes it comes down to, you have the final two candidates, and then they're all the same in terms of qualifications, achievements, etc.
Yes.
And then it comes
Yes.
down to the personality and the hidden things that you saw during the interview. Did they
Yeah.
interact with the team
Yeah.
when they came in? Were they
Yeah.
very insular? So it was things like
Yeah.
that that my parents constantly, th- you know, I was learning by seeing their actions. And when I was abroad, I was like, wow, this is what mom meant. This is what dad meant. On the flip side,
Yeah.
some of my values have also changed as I've gotten older. I'm 42 now. There's some things I valued when I was, in
Okay.
my
You
early
don't look
20s.
42, but
Well, there's some things that I just don't value now that I valued then.
yeah.
So that's changed over time.
Interesting. So, before I digress too much, I just love the conversation about values because I think too many of us don't get to define those things and then we just get swept up, you know, and kind of feeling that struggle inside where something's wrong, something's violated, but because you can't articulate that, oh, my value has been violated, you just don't set the right boundaries. So, I think values is just a really important subject. So, that was worth the digression. But you have a career. Like personally, I don't really, even having been in HR, I haven't really hired for a role like yours. I haven't recruited for a role like yours. I haven't been exposed to roles like yours yet because I guess online trading and marketing is still like in its infancy here in Zambia, like that kind of like robust online trading and marketing, right? So, could you just tell us about your current role and what exactly you do and how you just got to do it? Because I think for me, this is what it's all about: interesting careers and the people that do them and the people that are good at them. So, I feel like that would be very helpful for not just me, but even just our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of my career and how I started, when I arrived in Germany, so one of the key things was becoming fluent. So when I say fluent in written and spoken German, because without that you could not survive in the industry or even progress. And I took on the route in terms of developing myself and growing of an apprenticeship route. So applying for fashion brands because I was passionate about fashion. I was like, what am I good at? What do I love? Where
Yeah.
can I quickly, insert myself? And literally rose through there in terms of first of all, store management. There was no digital at the time. It was store management, store openings, looking after various retailers. So I worked for the Intertex Group, which you know as Zara. So back in the day when nobody
Oh,
knew about that business. So
very
worked
cool.
across Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and then just sort of rose through the ranks that way, literally through merit, through hard work, and going through all the management progression steps. Then I sort of said, right, what's next? How do I get, to that goal? When I said about making a lot of money that I couldn't do as a cardiac surgeon,
Yes. Yes.
looked around, I want to be interested in learning about the back end of businesses. How do businesses work operationally, supply chain, and went to work for brands where I was involved with managing the stores from the back end side, so to say. And that's where digital got into place as well. Digital had just started. Most shops or retailers were looking to sell online. So it was the same principles in terms of looking for a customer to come into your store, but doing it on a digital space and progressed through there as well. And then the current role that I'm in, so just to describe what a commercial director, trading director does. So my role is to come into business, set the strategic vision in terms of where is the best place for us to acquire a customer, to deliver our sales revenue, and also deliver profit. And in my role, I work across with marketing. So I have a marketing budget. I work with supply chain because I have to work with the teams in terms of how do we get the product to the consumer. I work with the operations team in terms of how do we package the product and send it to the consumer. Then also working with
Yeah.
digital agencies in terms of how do we use digital to talk to the customer. You talked about TikTok, Instagram, if it's in China, WeChat. So sort of having that cross-functional role, working across multiple departments to literally sell product online
Yeah.
and sell it to an existing customer and a new customer. And that's basically, in a nutshell, what I do. And honestly, Chipo, I love it. I
I can
feel like
tell.
I've come into my own. I'm able to assert myself, add value, motivate my team. Share some tips and lessons learned for the junior team. So you are right. That's not a position that exists in that form in Zambia. Otherwise, I would have been there, running the ship in
Yeah.
terms of such a role. But I'm sure it will come. Does that make
It's
sense?
coming. Yeah, it's coming. Um, so when you I love that you love your job. So, and I find that lots of people who love their jobs know what they're doing really well, know what they're good at, right? So, when you sum up all these different parts of you, when you sum up your experience, you sum up where you're coming from, what would you say are your gifts and your talents? What would you say you're just really naturally good at?
So that's a very good question. I had to dig deep because someone asked me this the other day. So
I'm
I'm
glad that
very
people are
good.
asking you.
I know, right? Yeah.
Prep work for me.
What is my gift? So in terms of I think not just personal capacity, my ability to problem solve. So to understand, go into a business, understand what the pain points are, what the issues are, and create a solution in terms of the path of how they can either turn around their business if their sales are failing or
Yep.
profit, or they're struggling with staffing or its brand positioning. Problem solving. I'm very good at problem solving and
A problem
building.
solver and
Building as
building.
well. So building
Yeah.
brands, building people, building relationships. Those are my strengths and my talent, I think.
Those are really powerful strengths in a leader because I think if you can set a vision and you can just like go towards a problem, I think being able to go towards a problem and solving it and being able to break down a problem is just amazing.
Because most
And
people
then,
run away from
yeah,
problems. They run away
most
from
people
it,
run away from problems.
hide it under the carpet.
Yeah. Hope it's
It's
not
someone
there.
else's problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Or they just pass the monkey. Like,
Oh yeah.
they say pass the monkey, like, oh, someone else should solve this. And I find that, like, it's not a common feat to have people that run towards problems or just are willing to just go into the muck and sort it out. And I think it's a really useful, not just like work related gift. I think it's a life skill as well because
I think I've always,
yeah.
Triple, I've always wanted to know how can I add value in a business, because it's not a classic career path. When
Yeah.
you're an accountant, you know what your deliverables are. They're very clear. When you're a doctor, you know what you learn and what it is you're going to be doing. If you're a lawyer, it's very clear. Whereas when you're in a retail marketing space, it's
Yep.
very important, especially the higher you rise, you have to know how you can add value to a business. It's so important.
Yeah, you have to you have to be able to create. I guess it's also like you could be like any ordinary person who comes with like, oh, and these are the textbook solutions, or you could choose to push the boundaries and kind of like be creative about how you handle certain things. And I guess that's what also sets you apart. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And
Yeah,
it's also changed so
yeah,
much. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, TikTok, nobody knew who that was. Instagram,
yeah,
mobile
yes,
finance. It's all these things where you think, wow, if I talk about how we used to go with I don't know, do they still do cashier checks in Zambia? Still going with a
yes.
check, you
You
know?
can if they I think they are less, but they still the people that old school will write you a check.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But when I was in Zambia, there were no ATMs. That was like, you know, who knew that you could
yeah,
even pay with your phone? So all these things where you think it's constantly evolving. So if you're working in the tech or digital space,
yeah,
you have to know how can you add value with the new technologies, the new
yeah,
developments that are coming up. Be curious and always learning.
yeah. And which kind of leads me to my next question, right? You and I've spoken about your passion or just enthusiasm for tech, right? And I know tech is something that we kind of embrace because when you're a consumer, you embrace tech. Like I have my laptop, it's my phone and this and that. But the world is moving in a direction that feels really far. Like right now we have AI that's just like taking over and it's like it just feels so far away. Like how do I where do I even start? So as someone who's passionate about tech, right? What do you wish like people knew or we knew, if you think of especially us here in Zambia, I didn't want to say back home because sometimes people roll their eyes at things like that, but us here in Zambia, what like people that like kind of dip their toe or are just consumers of tech, what is the one thing you wish we knew that would propel us to not just being consumer but actually leveraging into tech, building tech businesses, like just kind of like any advice to demystifying tech, I guess.
So the most important thing to know, so there was McKinsey wrote a report saying 80% of people in Africa, so African countries, are mobile first. Because let's face it, most people don't have desktops or laptops. You probably see a laptop or a desktop in a call center or an office or
Yep.
a big business, but most people have a mobile phone. So already
Yep.
the fact that Africa is mobile first is already a plus. And then just looking at Zambia, I'm really proud to see how entrepreneurs have been able to leverage digital. Like we are all very digital savvy. People have businesses, they'll put it on social media, they'll put it on Facebook. It's very easy now to connect with people, whether it's in Lusaka, Chingola, Ndola, Kitwa. It's very easy to do that. So that's already a
Yep.
positive. And you had your first guest, Pam, with Beauty Gardens. Her
Yes.
physical location is her business, but she leverages digital to talk about her services, to showcase her barbering services, hair services, her clothing line. So she's already using
Yeah.
that. And then the keyword is her call to action is for people to go into shops. And then there's Afri delivery, there's Woods Kitchen, there's a company called Lupia, and they do mobile
Yes.
finance.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So when you
Yeah.
go on their phone, sorry, on the digital space on social, they talk about their business and then they have a link that says, right, here you can apply for a loan. So I'm proud that, businesses, people, individuals are already leveraging the one thing they have in their hand that they're on all the
The
time
mobile phone. Yep.
to advertise their businesses. I think one thing that I would like Zambians to learn is to always put a call to action. So I'm looking at your content. What do you want me to do? Is there a number I can contact you to book your services? Is there a shop you want me to come to? I need to see that immediately. It's the first thing I need to find so that I can actually leverage your service. That is one thing that I think we could be better at. And
The
that
call
is
to
what
action.
we pay big money
Yeah.
here for agencies to tell us how to create. It's called a call to action. Do we want someone to book, to find us, to pay for something, to engage in our services? So we just need to be more clear. But I'm really proud when I look at the space. I learned so much about the developments and entrepreneurs that are going on in Zambia. So to circle back, just to answer your question, just people can, trust and have a bit more confidence in saying, contact me this way, call to action, so we can leverage your service really well.
I've never even really thought about that. I think I can. One of the things that's definitely an area of improvement for me is leveraging, online platforms for my actual business. But the actual like call to action is the last thing. I'm thinking like, okay, it's content and the graphics and this and that and that. And the last thing I oddly think about, which is the thing that I should be thinking about, because what I want is the call to action, because that's what ultimately gets me the customer, generates and then generates me revenue, right? So it's so obvious, but it's not so obvious. So I
Because
I
people
I
are dealing with
personally,
bundles, Chipo.
yeah.
I don't want to be wasting my bundles scrolling. I need to, okay, I'm interested in this business. How can I find you? How can I get in touch? How can I spend my money with you? You
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
that's always one thing to remember. Not everyone has got endless bundles to
This
play
is
with.
true.
Yeah.
This is true. Okay, so I you mentioned earlier praying with your family, and I imagine it wasn't like an easy feat going by yourself to Germany, and I'm assuming because you left home when there was financial challenges, there was probably no nest egg to help you like settle, and a lot of it sounds like very self motivated, self starting, and just like going for it, right? So when you think about your spiritual beliefs, and when you think about if you have any spiritual beliefs, that is, how much has spirituality played a role in just, in your journey, I guess, in propelling you from, you, even just that moment of writing those exams when, the future was already looking bleak, to where you are now, where you're successful. No, and you're not just successful in terms of like we're measuring you at like a global scale, right? Where this is not a race thing, it's not a woman thing. You are just like successful, period. Like, how much has spirituality played a role in this journey?
I think it's always important, person I feel, to believe in something. So I work with all, people of all denominations who have other spiritual beliefs. Some are atheists, etc. And the common denominator for people who have a spiritual belief is they believe in a higher power that guides them.
Yep.
So, giving them meaning, meaning to their life, meaning to growing themselves, meaning in
Yep.
terms of how they lead their life, how they interact with other people. So that has always been very important for me to have something that grounds me in terms of my what do I believe in, what matters to me, because that's then my guiding compass in terms of going through any challenges that I've had, knowing that
Yep.
I can pick myself up, knowing that if something's not going well, I have to keep going because I have that inner belief that there is something outside of me that is also helping me and supporting me and keeping me out of danger as well. So I firmly believe that spirituality has played a very important role in just grounding me, giving me some guidance and guiding principles of how to live my life. Obviously, I'm not perfect, like
Yeah.
everybody else, but I think it's sort of helped me um, because interestingly, my drive for success was running away from a life that I never wanted to have. I said to myself, I always wanted stability. I always wanted a
Yep.
roof over my head. So the house that I have, I bought it myself. You know, I put food on the table, I can provide. I never wanted to be put in that situation. But also, so I was running away from something I feared, never wanting to have happen to me, but
Yeah.
also running towards, the things, the gifts that you were talking about, the talents, the
Yeah.
things that we drive, being creative, working with people. I am a people person. I hope to inspire, any of the lessons that I wish I would have known when I was younger. I try to impart that in myself. So I think spirituality has played a very big part in just having those grounding principles as well. And the same ones that I give to my children. I know when my son goes to university in September, he's gotten the foundation and he has
Amazing.
to just
Yeah.
he needs to find his way, but I've given him sort of the toolkit
Yeah.
to help him navigate.
The values.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that's great. Congratulations, son leaving
I
the
know, right?
nest.
Yeah.
Uh
I'll be
yeah.
crying when that happens. But
You
it's
you'll
taken a
probably be
village.
crying.
It's
It's
taken a
taken a
village.
village.
Honestly, I mean, you know my sisters. It's taken my
Yeah.
sisters and brothers and to
Yeah.
to, to raise these two amazing boys. So yeah, that circle, that village, that network is still very
Yeah.
important for sure.
Yeah, they say you never make it alone. Like nobody makes it alone. Like
Yeah,
everybody has, and people who lean in to help even do better. So
definitely. Yeah, you
yeah.
you you have to accept that you can't be good at everything. And when I was younger, I thought, right, I just need to be 100% perfect. And when you get into to leadership, the perfection is in your imperfection. Getting to leadership roles, you realize you
Yeah.
have to delegate. You have to hire people around you who know
Yeah.
more than you do. And that's okay. That's not a bad
Yeah.
thing. It's a good thing as well.
You know, what I need to ask this because I think it's also a very important um, lesson is when did you realize you can't do everything? Like what were some of the lessons that you learned where you were just like, you know what, I'm good at what I'm good at, and this is enough. Like that acceptance of being enough, and like I can't be more. I can't be a superwoman because it sounds like that's a mentality I used to have as well. So it sounds like that's a mentality you had. Like when did that change?
Yeah, it's when I realized I was listening to a podcast and it's called Modern Wisdom by a guy called Chris Williamson. And he said, you have to accept in life that in order for you to progress or become successful at something in the long term, you're going to have to give up something in the short term. And once you've accepted that, that will help you with whatever you're doing. There's always something that falls down. There's always something that
Yeah,
you're not good at. And I was just like, wow, this makes complete sense.
it
So, for example,
does.
when you have
Yeah,
children, you are focusing, yes, you are focusing on your career, but your career progression maybe is not as strong or as fast. I'm just being
yeah,
realistic here because you have other priorities, and your priorities
yeah.
are, nurturing and looking after your children. But obviously now, if I say my son's turning 18 on Saturday, the other one's 15, I can
Oh,
now
amazing.
I can now target other things because
Yeah.
that focus of raising them and just being for them 200%, that is no longer there. So I think I realized that, to answer your question, when I became a mother, that was a
Yeah.
big game changer and realization. And I think when I got my also first senior leadership position, and I was always the person who just, if somebody else couldn't do it in my team, I wanted to do it myself. And I
Yeah.
realized
Yeah.
I
You
was
held
going
on
to
to
burn
everything.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to burn out. Obviously,
Yeah.
the responsibility was on my shoulders, but I needed to either delegate or hire people who could do the job, or train and develop them and give them my skill set. So it was when I became a mother and also in my first senior leadership position.
Interesting.
When was that
Yeah, that's
pivotal
that's
point
really
for
key.
you? When was that? When did you have that
Mine
realization?
mine was a health issue. I think I used to try so hard to be everything for everyone and just like do the most, show up as 100% at work, show up as 100% as a friend, be the life of the party, be everything. And health has a way of humbling you. I fell ill where, to a point where I had to have like a surgery and things like that. And the helplessness of going through a surgical procedure and 100% relying on others just like forced me to go inward and just ask myself a lot of questions around like, what does this all really mean? If at like a click it can all change and I can be this helpless, what is it, what does all this really mean, this go 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 stuff? So that was the first thing. But then after that, I also went through therapy. I also went through therapy, and I started to realize that I was not my work, because I also attached all my value, not even like a lot, because most of us attach like a lot of value, but some value somewhere else. For me, it was all my value, went to my work. And, as someone who doesn't have like kids yet, and, I wasn't married, so I didn't have other areas to channel some of that, like, so it all went to work. And so small mistake, typo in an email would would the emotions of a typo in an email versus like something very big that I would mess up were the same. So it was all that I had to question, and then I had to start letting go of some of the things, to say you'll never be good at everything. You're good at what you're good at, and that's okay. You're actually like enough. Yes, you can keep improving, keep doing better, but you're enough, and you take care of yourself, because it's all like connected, right? If I'm not
And
taking
it's
care
also
of,
okay
yeah,
to pivot as
yeah,
well. Like you're allowed to change direction. Growth is not linear.
yep,
You don't have to go in one particular path. You speaking to so many people who have also had
yes,
very different, you just think, wow, so it's not just me who had to change
yes.
trajectory. You just
It's not
realize
just me.
everybody has their own
It's not
path.
just me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it's really important. And so even now in my role, when I speak with like different people and they're having like crisis of conscience versus like my work, and then there's life, and I'm trying to have a baby, but is it the right time? I'm like, well, if you're thinking about having a baby, you should probably you should carve out time to do the other life stuff, because this is not everything. This job thing is not everything. Like, you have to kind of figure out how to live a full life. So whereas 5 years ago, I'd have probably been like, but you're gonna miss out on so much. And so the advice has definitely, how I see life and the advice
I
has definitely
know.
changed.
It's
Yeah.
interesting because you know my sisters. I've got 8 brothers and sisters. For
Yeah.
those who don't know, they're all educated doctors, engineers.
The
They're
big
all educated,
family.
and yeah, and
Yeah.
they're all in different phases of their life.
All
And there's
super
no,
smart. Gosh.
yeah, but also no one thing fits all. There, my father is not rushing, I think so, for any of them to get married or try to not. He wants them to live their best
Yeah.
authentic life and be happy and contribute to the community. He just wants us to be happy, and that's
Yeah.
such a blessing. I think also the death of our mom just made us realize life is too short. You just have to live your best life for you, because it could
Yeah.
all just end just like that.
Yeah. And also, like, shout out to your parents. I love your family. Like, you say you're nine, but you're like nine really amazing humans. Like, you're all like, you've got your different personalities, but the thing that goes across is like you're just like good human beings. And then you're also like super smart, you know. But
Yeah.
I love that you're good human beings, because there's not a sibling of yours that I've met that I'm like, or like that I don't get that Sangha love or Sangha warmth. Um, so I'm gonna kudos to your parents for that.
Definitely,
Kudos
Mr.
to your
Sanga,
parents,
if you're
Mr.
listening.
Sangha. I'm sure he will, and then he'll call and say, "Princess, I was watching."
You know, I
Yeah,
told him that he can't call everyone princess because people we don't know what people identify as these days. He was like, "Oh yes, very, very valid tip." So, but the people who he still loves and
very
I'm
valid
sure
tip.
you're still princess
Anyway,
to him,
yeah,
bro.
I I love it. I personally, like, as someone who doesn't have a dad, I love it when Mr. Sangha calls me princess, because I just melt whenever I meet him and he's like, princess. I'm like,
Yes,
yes. So yeah, it's amazing. So anyway, I follow you on all platforms, watch your podcast, everything. And I see your workout videos and you beast, you go hard, and you're consistent. And now I'm realizing, like, as much as spirituality is a big thing in people's lives, I'm seeing that the physical fitness is also becoming a huge, it's not a movement per se, but people are just taking it with the seriousness that they also take these other things that we've taken in the past, like spirituality and eating well, so I've seen how consistent you are. I see how hard you go, and I also want to know, like, how much does physical fitness play, what role does it play in your success, in keeping you on top of your game, and how do you stay so consistent?
Yeah. So coming back to when I was growing up, so I was into sports, played basketball, track, etc. So I think that sort of already come from there, that foundation. I think one of the things that guides me is, I was a single parent raising my children, and I realized, if anything happens to me, if I'm not healthy, who's going to look after them? If I'm not healthy, I can't work. So that was also one of the things, saying I need to be the best version of myself to be able to provide for my children, and then also to excel for my job, because it involves travel, it involves being alert, attention to detail. When you're looking after £2 million marketing budgets, it's not a funny feat. So you have to be very agile. And then also, just from a mental mental health and physical space, it's where I can just be me, be badass, train, work on my body, work on my mind, and it just gives me so much comfort to have something outside of work as well.
Yeah.
Because I can't just be at work all the time. And as
Yeah.
my sister said, your children aren't your hobby. So I was like, okay, I need to find something else to do. And it was also a way of me finding my tribe. So people who didn't work in the same industry as me, maybe didn't have children, or maybe didn't have same circumstances, but we had that common thread. So whether it was running, whether it was CrossFit, just something to ground me and form that community. That was really the how it all started. And it's discipline.
Yeah.
It's really discipline. I'll give an example. Yesterday, I was in London for work, a networking event, and a women's CEO dinner. My train was at 22:35. I got home at midnight, and I knew I had to be up for my class at 6 a.m. It wasn't motivation that got me up this morning. It was discipline. I need to get it in. I need to put in the work. I need to be focused, get ready for today. So it's three things, just circling back to your question. So being disciplined and consistent,
Yeah.
because I feel if I'm disciplined and consistent at this one thing, going to the gym, it means I can be disciplined and consistent with delivering a project on time. I can be consistent with my
Very true.
relationships with my friends and family. I can be consistent in terms of there for my kids. So there's a common thread there, and health is wealth, Chipo. Health is wealth. So whether
Health
it's
is
just
wealth.
walking,
True.
whether it's just walking. Look, I love my wine. I love my, enjoying time and having fun. But I think you also need something that grounds you and is something that will help me in my 60s, my 70s, hopefully 80s, 90s.
So true. Yeah. Um, it's also just a common thread. I'm starting to see that, it, like, you can't, even if you tried, you chances are you can't perform at your optimum best if your physical, because there's a lot of connection between your physical health and your mental health. So yeah, I think it's something that, and I like to ask that question when I see someone is active, because I think the message, the revolution should be televised. I think it should become a part of our norm.
As my sister says, because she's a doctor, she says you're a geriatric in terms of category. If you're not healthy, if I get ill now, it
Yeah.
will take longer for me to heal, things to repair. So I was like, okay, I need to get it in. I need to get those workouts in.
When you put it that way, whew, yeah, when you put it that way, it becomes real. Um, so you have a podcast yourself. We started around the same time, which has been great to just, like, share notes and see each other grow. So the Trailblazer Podcast, and I love it. I watch every single episode, and I know you probably get this question uh, a lot. I get this question so much, but I'm going to ask you because I have to ask someone. I get this so much, so I need to ask you. What are you hoping to achieve with your podcast?
So I started the podcast, which is called the Trailblazers Experience Podcast. Plug available on all streams. Please watch, share,
Yes.
etc. And I started it for. I had to think, who's the audience? What do I want to say? What's my message? What's my vision? So you can see that strategic thinking coming through. And what is something that I enjoy? And the whole idea was to target women specifically.
Yep.
And I always thought when I was growing up and I would watch, people being interviewed in careers that I aspired to be, especially women, I always wondered, how did they get there? How did they do that?
Yeah.
How did they achieve it? What challenges did they have? Is it generational wealth that got them into that role, or were they a grafter? Did they start that business themselves? If had some upsides, what does that mean for me? Does that mean I have to work harder to attain that
Yep.
position? And it doesn't exist unless you're talking about Oprah, who's a billionaire, or there's a lady called Bosoma St. John. She was the CMO of
Oh,
Uber,
I love, I
Spotify,
love,
etc.
I love Bose.
Did you know
She's like
she's?
my,
And you just
yeah.
think, wow, how can we provide a forum? Because I couldn't find one where I'm talking to amazing women in different, careers globally, who are, black, brown, Asian, white, fat, thin, all of it, who just look like some young girl out there and telling their story, their challenges. If I
Yep.
can put it out
Yep.
there in the universe, someone will watch it and be inspired. And that was really the main purpose. And also my kids said, don't start a podcast. That's embarrassing. So my kids knew that as well. So that was the purpose. I didn't think it was
Yeah.
gonna go anywhere. I thought I would have, one episode a month or every 2 months, but every person I asked, because I don't take no for an answer, I explained to them why I thought they were a trailblazer and why I thought they needed to be on the podcast. So
Yeah.
yeah, the mission is to have candid conversations with women in various industries, entrepreneurs, etc. Have them tell their stories, their
Yep.
challenges, and any tips they can give. And maybe the vision is, if I can connect someone who is starting out with someone who's been on the podcast, and they can make that link and have a relationship in terms of mentor, well, that's great. Then I've
Yeah.
help one, each one teach one, as they say. So that's really why I started
Each
it.
one teach one. Yeah. And worthy cause because conversations can change your life. And sometimes mentorship doesn't even have to be like long term. It could be literally one call, 15 minutes. Someone says something, something unlocks, and your life goes on a different trajectory, which is why I think platforms like this are important. They're not just for vibes. I think I've greatly benefited from podcasts, greatly. Like you've referenced podcasts so many times, which is what I do. I listened to the podcast this morning, and it's always like fuel, So I think
And you're
it's like
always
some great
learning,
work.
right, Chipo, isn't it? You're always learning.
Always,
There's
always.
You always have to be curious, open to learn new things, explore different channels. Otherwise, you don't grow. Exposure, it helps you when you travel. It helps you
Yes,
see the world in a different way. It helps you appreciate
yes,
your culture, your
yeah,
values, your heritage, and also tap into, okay, what am I also good at? What can I give to the world, my community, my friends, etc. It just sparks a different a way of thinking. Your mindset
yeah,
changes.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So you've done a lot, but you're still going. So and I love that because I can feel your energy, and you said like you're about to be an empty nester. That also gives you a renewed purpose, I guess, because what's next, right? So what are some of the things Ntola is yet to do, and how are you intentional about rest in this season, or is rest for later?
So I think turning 40, and I'm 42 now, I think I've learned everything is about balance. So that's been a major lesson for me about balance. accepting the things that I can control and letting go of things that I cannot. So career progression is still a very big thing. I still see myself at some point, being a CEO or CCO somewhere.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's opportunity for me to take on, board, non-exec board directorships and mentoring other businesses, helping other businesses. I think that's something I could do, I will do. Um, and then continuing on my fitness journey as well. So signed up for a few competitions as well, just to keep me going, having a goal. I think just living a well balanced, or as Boz says, an urgent life, a well balanced
An
life,
urgent
and
life. Yeah.
yeah, and living in the present, but also preparing for the future. That's sort of my motto. I've never lived in the past, because you just live with regret and say, what if this would have happened? I'm always about being in the present and planning for the future, basically.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And have you read The Urgent Life yet?
Oh my goodness, yes. I
Yeah,
mean,
me
her
too.
stories. I really need to reach out to her. She's one I'd love to have on my podcast, if she'll if
I,
she'll have
you
me
know, so we
in her
both we
time.
both would love to have her on our podcast, and
Yeah,
if you went first, I would be absolutely happy for you because I think she's a trailblazer for sure.
yeah, and
So
she
maybe you
tells
go
honest
first. Yeah,
stories about. She's been very
yeah,
authentic about her marriage, the loss of her husband.
yeah,
She's talked about the challenges of her in her career, and a lot of
yeah.
things that she faced are similar. When my parents told me that when you go abroad, one of the things you need to know is you're going to have to work twice as hard because you're a woman, or three times as hard because you're black, and then your ethnicity, your culture, your race is your strength. That is who you are. Embrace it and break that glass ceiling. But it's tough. You have to just be strong, but you have to just keep going, keep pushing through. So I
Yeah.
really loved reading her book.
Yeah.
It's really
And yeah, for me it was what's that they say? It was the authenticity for me. Like she went to places that I was like, I'm not even sure I would go there and
I
tell my
know,
story
right?
so openly and so vulnerably. Even
Yes,
in
it's the
even in spaces
vulnerability.
where yeah, even when I'm not the nice guy in that
Yes.
because sometimes we tell the story of always just being the nice guy, but she also went to places that even when it didn't paint her in the greatest light, like she went there. And for me, that's authenticity. You're like a whole human. And I loved her more after that book.
Do
So
you think
yeah,
also there's strength in being vulnerable as well? I think that's a
yeah.
very big thing too.
Yeah, I think for sure. Every time I've been, and that's how I lead now. My teams can tell you now that I'm a very open, vulnerable leader. Like the type of stories I tell them, or the types of, even when we face challenges together, we face them together. When I'm
Mhm.
frustrated, they know. When I'm not having, some days I'm just like, today is mental health day. Today is not a good day. Today I can't, guys. And they know I'm saying that not because of anything they did, but just because I'm a human being. And that honesty has brought out the vulnerability, brings out vulnerability in people. Even the people that came very, very stoic, very like, no, this is work, this is professional. I've gotten to know them on a personal level because they've seen me be personal. Of course, with boundaries, I think boundaries are important, but vulnerability in leadership changes the game because you truly become in it together. So yeah, I think it's powerful.
And I think as a woman as well, I think that's our superpower too, because
Yeah.
we are, from Mother Nature itself. We show empathy. I think we have very strong emotional intelligence, which
Yep.
serves us well when you have teams, and you need to tap into that in order to have to be a successful leader, successful teams around you.
Yep. True. True. So, yeah, man, Ntola, this has been a great conversation, and I think I appreciate just the ease with which you've told your story and your openness and your candidness. I think are just like so. It's so important because I also believe in just demystifying success, I think, or demystifying the journey because sometimes when you sit back and look at, a black woman, a Zambian woman who's an executive in the UK or in Europe, you would think that she's this special being that's totally different from you. And to hear the way you've told your story makes it like, oh, even I can do that, or even I can tap into some of this wisdom, or, there's still a chance for me. And that's the whole point, right? That's why we are having these discussions. That's why we're doing this podcast. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's nice to hear because my sister was telling me this the other day. She was like, "You're a self-starter. You've done it all yourself.
yeah.
There was no trust fund, or some money on the
There was
side or
no,
some
there was nothing. There was
connection.
no springboard. It was like,
No,
listen, sink
yeah,
or swim. Yeah.
yeah, proper grafting, hard work, and I didn't think I would get here. We all have imposter syndrome, but I said
Yeah.
I knew no matter what, there is no way that I knew the life that I didn't want to lead, and that was sort of the guiding compass. So to
Yeah.
any woman out there, you can achieve anything. You just have to work hard, make no excuses. Yes, there may be some sacrifices you have to make, but if you want
Yeah.
it, you can have it, you can achieve it. It will take time. I think good things achieved over time are the ones that stay with longevity. So don't
True
look
that.
for short term thrills. Delayed gratification is always the best.
Yeah. So we normally end this podcast with our guest asking me questions, but then I'm going to appear on your podcast like
I know, right?
pretty soon. So I'm wondering, do you want to, do you have questions? Do you want to save those questions? Like, how are you feeling? Because I also want to save all the good stuff for when you and
I
I get
know. Yeah,
together.
like a sneak
Yeah.
peek. Yeah. No, I've got two questions
Let's
because
do it.
you
Let's do it.
you talked about my career and in terms of, it's something that's not known in Zambia, but you're in, human resources and headhunting. Is that something you believe that's new in Zambia and that people need to tap into and know that yes, there are headhunters out there such as yourself?
I don't think it's new. I think it's there. So I think HR as a career is definitely a career that's been there. It's seen
Of
its
course.
evolution, from personnel to, HR to talent. Headhunting as well. People do recruitment. We have quite a few recruitment firms that do headhunting. However, nobody does it like me though.
Go
Um,
girl.
yeah, I,
What's your
I think
special
it's
sauce
something.
then?
Yeah, pardon.
What's your special sauce? What makes you, badass at that then?
I think what makes me badass at headhunting and at like people strategy and HR is that it's literally what I'm good at. It's that it's the one thing I leaned into early without even before I started working. I was managing people. I was looking for opportunities for people, connecting people. So I think for me, I've had to attach like yes, the skill and the experience, but I do it with a passion, a creativity, a flair that I rarely find in some of my peers, and things like that. So I know I'm definitely in the right place, doing the right thing, and I think that that's what makes me so unique. But also, I'm a problem solver like you, so I I don't take this is not possible for an answer. I think there are ways around it. And because of that, I think I've done some really cool things in my career. Even at a young age, I was able to, you know, go to able to take on assignments that even I was like, why are they giving you this assignment? And why are they giving you this check? Do you even know what you're doing? But I would get it done. I would push through. I'd figure out a way, and it would be value worth their money. So, like I said, I think everybody does it, but nobody does it like me. And not just in Zambia. I think I'm good. I'm good worldwide. I'll thrive
Oh, that's
anywhere.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I could ask questions for days, but I just want to say, just on the record, what you're doing is great with the podcast, having a
Thank you.
forum, a platform for women and men to discuss their talents, their gifts. And like I said, if you're into podcasts, or I think people usually, statistically, people who are into podcasts are people who generally love reading as well. So they're into tapping into knowledge. So Yeah, the world is your oyster in terms of where you are going to take this, not where you can take it, where you're going to take this. So thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Amen. And I'm really looking forward to being on yours. So this is not the end. So we'll be seeing each other pretty soon. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for being like a big sister. Thanks for always inspiring me. And I think if you inspire me, there's probably a lot of other people you inspire.
Thank you, Chipo.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you like, review, and subscribe. Thank you.